Eli Paperboy Reed, good to have you here at noise11.com, and good to see the bags are almost packed for another trip down under.
Good to be here. I'm getting ready to go.
What's this going to be? I think the fifth is by my count.
Yeah, that's right.
2008, 2009, 2011, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So you're pretty well versed with the accent now.
Yeah, I do okay. I prefer to not try. If I think I will probably make a fool of myself.
But you don't jump off the plane and go, "G'day, mate," to the
No, I think that would be offensive to all involved.
You could do it in reverse when you go back home.
Yeah,
See if they know what you're talking about.
Now that's a good idea.
Yeah. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Sings Walkin and Talkin for My Baby and Other Smash Hits is 20 years old.
20 years old. It's certainly hard for me to believe.
Well, if that album was a child, it still wouldn't be able to drink in America.
That's, but it's still like, she's only 8. I think that when she's 20, hopefully she's not going to be, living here anymore.
But I would imagine it's a pretty good bar album. A few drinks would have been had to that album over the years.
Yes, I'd say that's probably true.
One of those great records that sat around in the time. It's about to be expanded into 3 discs. So explain where the other 2 discs of music came from. Were they just hanging around in vaults?
So the original album had 12 songs on it, but we recorded 17 that day. And there's going to be 4 bonus tracks from the original album. One I just didn't think was good enough. And then a whole additional bonus disc of record recordings, a session we did at a radio station, also in 2005. So that's where all the additional music sort of comes from. So there's more bonus tracks on this than there are original tracks, actually.
How hard was it to track down what you'd done back then?
I have things pretty well organized. This was something that I had on a cassette tape. That had just I kept trying to keep as much as I can, and I went back through stuff, however long ago it was, and found that and put it on, and I thought it really sounded amazing, and so I took it to my friend Kevin Blackler, who remastered it, made it sound up to snuff as much as it could be, since it's pretty raw sounding as it is. And I was really excited to put it out and have it be a part of this reissue.
Because there's so much you can do with technology these days. We've seen, the famous Beatles song just a couple of years ago, Now and Then. Did you have to go through a process at that level to get some of this stuff cleaned up?
No, it wasn't that bad. It sounds like it sounded. I mean, we didn't do all that much, just shine it up a little bit.
I'm always fascinated with Clarksdale, Mississippi, of where you have been a resident.
I have indeed.
Tell me about that place. It's like historically for music, it seems to be ground zero for blues. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the case. I mean, I certainly think that's why a lot of people revere it. Muddy Waters and Son House and Ike Turner and Junior Parker and Sam Cooke, all these people. I mean, that's a pretty significant list right there. John Lee Hooker, it's crazy. And I think a lot of people come to Clarksdale because of that, but I don't think that that's what I was focused on when I went there. I think that at least then, less so now, it's 20 years ago or more, 21 years ago, that I lived there, 23 years ago. Geez. And, the people that were going to the little juke joints and clubs that I was playing at or hanging out at, they were not interested in listening to Son House records. That wasn't relevant to them. They wanted to hear Lattimore and Otis Clay and Tyrone Davis, Bobby Blue Bland, that sort of stuff. And that was kind of what I was interested in too. I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong. I love country blues, But playing like soul music, Southern soul music, was that was what was interesting to, I mean, what people wanted to hear down there, you know?
Did you smother yourself in the history of the town? Like, did you go to Muddy Waters Cabin and check that out, for instance?
Muddy Waters Cabin had been moved to the Delta Blues Museum already at that point. They moved the whole thing. They picked it up at Stovall and moved it. Muddy Waters was a very famous blues singer who lived in the town or grew up in the town that I lived in. And he lived in a very small cabin on Stovall Plantation, which is a big farm. And the people who thought that was important moved it to a museum. Anyway, just explaining to her.
It's good to have the history lesson. We
Yeah,
pass on our knowledge.
yeah, exactly. So, did I go? I mean, a little bit. I went to Dockery Plantation. I thought that was pretty cool. Um, you know, I was much more interested in just playing music rather than being a tourist, really. I thought that there was so much living, breathing stuff. I mean, literally the first weekend that I got there, somebody I had just met like pulled up on me walking on the street, and he said, "Hey, you want to go up to Oath the Turners in Como and to the picnic and hear RL?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, let's go." And so Oath is up there barbecuing a goat, and there's the big fife and drum picnics, and Arnold Burnside is there and playing, and it was just like
Goat sounds yummy.
goat is yummy. Yeah. So it was just you know, a living, breathing thing that was happening at that point. I never, going to see somebody's tombstone didn't sound appealing to me at that point, you know?
Let's talk about another album, Come and Get It. That was the
Sure.
major album release.
Hmm.
Mike Elizondo, who I thought was a very strange choice of a producer because he'd done like 50 Cent, In the Club, Eminem,
Yeah,
Real Slim Shady. He'd
it's
worked
true.
with Carrie Underwood, Linkin Park, 21 Pilots. Why him on that record?
So, I mean, it's a long time ago. I mean, I met a bunch of people. I was also really young. I mean, again, I was 26 when I signed to Capitol. So did I know what I was doing? Not that much. But I met Mike, and Mike's a great musician. He's very smart. He's got open ears, and this was a record for a major label, so they wanted it to have, a particular shine on it to some degree. And Mike was willing to still do what I wanted to do, which was record on tape and record mostly live, um, while at the same time kind of bringing his knowledge to the table about how modern records are supposed to sound. But Mike, like we had a 10-piece string section on that record, and Mike laid the score out on the control room on the mixing desk and could read the score and work with the arranger to edit the string section, the string parts. So Mike was a great combination of a really good pop engineer with great pop sensibility and a really amazing musician in his own right.
The next album came out through Warner, Nights Like This,
Hmm.
and when I listened to that album, I felt that Warner was trying to turn Eli Paperboy Reed into Eli Bruno Mars Reed. Were you were you comfortable with that record?
I mean, that was sort of what I wanted to do. Nobody told me what to do. They really didn't. And I know that's hard to believe, but I wanted to I wanted to be, famous. I wanted to make music for as many people as I possibly could, and part of that involved making a record that was, could theoretically be more broadly acceptable. Um, but I wrote all the songs on it. I produced that myself with my collaborator at the time, Ryan. Um, yeah, I mean, that was sort of where I was at with it at the time, and I think it's a really cool record, and I think it's really good. It was a really, really difficult time for the record industry. In 2014, there was still no streaming or anything like that, and nobody was buying CDs. It was just, the music industry was in the tank. So nobody was willing to stick their neck out and, invest in the marketing dollars that it takes to make a record like that succeed. and I sort of just fell by the wayside, sadly.
How much of Come and Get It and nights like this actually are still in the set list today?
Come and Get It a lot. I love Come and Get It, and I love the songs on it. Some of my favorite songs I ever wrote. Nights like this, not so much. I usually play one song from it that I like that I think kind of meshes with the other, other songs in the set. We played more in the past. It's just not. I don't know. It's not the way the records were made. It's different. Nights like this is harder to recreate in a stage setting, if that makes sense.
And then Yep Roc comes along, My Way Home, 2016, and
Yeah.
he's back.
I mean, I got dropped from Warner Brothers after all that, and then I made My Way Home basically independently. I made it on my own dime. I got my own band in the studio. It was just my friends. Back to what I was doing very early, which is recording all to tape in a friend's studio. This was just in his apartment in Brooklyn, and we did that whole record in like 3 days. And then I had, I reached out to some people that I knew, including Glenn Dacre from Yep Roc, because Red Eye, the distribution arm of Yep Roc, had distributed Roll With You, that first album, or that, the record on Q Division. So I knew him from then, and I sent him the My Way Home record, and he jumped at the chance to sign me up and put that record out, and we've been working together ever since. So it's been 10 years actually this year.
And they lived happily ever after, I think the fairy tale goes.
Yeah, I guess so. With any record label artist relationship, there's a back and forth, but in general, yeah, I feel very happy there.
The album after that, 99 Cent Dreams, was recorded at Sam Phillips recording studio. What's it like when you walk into a place like that? Was that the original Sun Studios that Elvis and Johnny Cash and all of those worked in?
No, so at Sun was basically a space that Sam Phillips, who founded Sun Records, was renting. And then as basically after he sold Elvis's contract for whatever it was, $35,000, which is a lot of money back then, he used that money to build what became known as Sam Phillips Recording, which was a kind of a high-tech, state-of-the-art studio for 1959. He built the building himself. He designed this, the studio was designed, specifically for that. So that's where 99 Cent Dreams was cut, because I had a good friend, Matt Ross Spang, who was like, he had been kind of in charge of the rehabilitation of Sam Phillips, in, the mid 2000s. They were keeping stuff, storing stuff in the echo chambers and things like that. So he brought it. Still, I think you got to go. Um, so he kind of refurbished the studio and was making records there. And I love the way the records, she's saying bye.
Bye.
The records that he was making and the way they sounded. And I wanted to, I wanted to work there. I thought it was really cool and really fun. I had also never made a record. No, I have a cat. Never made a record at like in an on location sort of thing. I'd never gone to a city and lived there for 2 weeks and made a record in that. It was that I never did that, so that was really cool.
Yeah, it's a shame Sam wasn't around to hear your record then.
It was. Well, Jerry Phillips, though, his son was there for a lot of those sessions. And Jerry's a really wonderful guy, still owns a studio.
How modernized have they made that studio over the years?
Not a lot. A lot of the gear, had been upgraded to some degree. They have a digital recording there. It's not all tape. But the space, gear, it comes and goes, but like the space and the echo chambers, there's three different echo chambers that create three different really specific reverb sounds. Just the room and the platforms and the way that it was designed are still just the same.
So the Australian tour is coming up, and this is actually getting into the venues. We've played a lot of the music festivals over the years,
Yeah.
but this is really the first of the major tours that you've had in Australia, where you're going to a lot of the places a lot of the Australian artists would have played in over the years.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, I love to play theaters. that sort of thing. And we're doing one big festival, which helps kind of bring us all down. And yeah, it's going to be great. I think there's some beautiful venues on this tour.
Well, you're starting off in Melbourne at the Corner Hotel. Now, this is the venue where, when Jack White was waiting to go on later in the evening in the band room, where you will actually be sitting waiting to go on as well, he wrote Seven Nation Army, the White Stripes hit.
Wow.
So there's
Wow.
there's some history there.
That's amazing.
Paul Kelly wrote Leaps and Bounds out at the bar.
Oh, man.
Mick Jagger used that venue to play a secret show in Melbourne, and
Wow.
and you too made a video clip in that same room from that same stage that you will be on.
Wow. Oh man, I didn't know any of that.
So we've got history in Australia too.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So the tour kicks off in Melbourne May 8. It's going to be great to see you back down here, Eli Paperboy Reed. Thank you for joining us in Noise 11.
Yeah, appreciate it.